Welcome in, Slumpbusters. Congrats on making it past week 1, but now it's time to do the heavy lifting. It's time to hit up that waiver wire. So I got a few names, throw your way, help you bust the slump and win your league. Let's start off first at the quarterback position. Famous Jameis Winston started off with 5 passing touchdowns against the Green Bay Packers. Huge week 1. But surprisingly, he's still on the waiver wire in more than 50% of leagues. Throw some big-time fab bucks at Jameis Winston. I think one thing was clear in week 1. The New Orleans offense can still cook. If you go back to the heyday with Sean Payton, Drew Brees in his prime, this New Orleans offense used to put up points. And why can't they with Jameis Winston? This guy was a #1 overall pick, and his last full season, say what you want about the 30-30 year, he still put up 5,000 passing yards. So go ahead, spend the fab, get him in your lineups, get him on your roster, and you'll be happy that you picked up a bona fide QB1 off the waiver wire this year. But what about winning week 2? I'm going to throw some dollar menu type quarterbacks out to you. I'm talking about Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater looked great in week 1 against the Giants. He's going up against the South Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Tyrod Taylor did an excellent job against them, and I expect Teddy Bridgewater, who's always been efficient, doesn't turn the ball over, to be able to move the ball as well on Jacksonville. One thing is clear, this defense won't be stopping anyone this year, so take advantage of week 2. Teddy Bridgewater is an excellent streaming option. And another one I'm going to throw your way, Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, I got the personal bias in the background, but against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are riding high off their huge week 1 victory over the Atlanta Falcons, I could see some regression from this defense. We weren't projecting this defense as good coming into the year. I think that week 1 was a very deceptive week, and I think Jimmy Garoppolo, who had a very efficient game against the Lions, should be able to take advantage of this Philadelphia secondary. So Jimmy G, picking him up off waivers for limited fab, go ahead and sign me up. Speaking of San Francisco, let's talk about their backfield. Raheem Moster is going to be out 8 weeks. You can throw him in an IR spot, but honestly, I don't think he'll have an opportunity to earn this backfield back when he comes back off injury, because there are some exciting young names to put on your waiver wire watch for this week. And Elijah Mitchell's one of them. Guy's 9% owned, had over 100 yards, a touchdown, looked explosive, has similar speed to Raheem Mostert, and a perfect fit for this zone running scheme. I think this is the type of guy coming off week 1 that you put 25% of your fab budget into. And not far behind him, his backfield mate, JaMycal Hasty. The bottom line is I want a piece of the San Francisco backfield any way I can get it. I won't throw as high a priority at JaMycal Hasty, but definitely put him on your watch list, as he can potentially steal some touches, steal some touchdowns out of this backfield as well. Another name, I mean, we slept on him, but Mark Ingram is clearly the #1 running back out of that Houston Texans committee. He had 26 rushing attempts in week 1. He had a touchdown in week 1, so he's getting the goal line work. It's not a sexy name, it's not exciting, and you know David Johnson and Philip Lindsay could be involved too. But Mark Ingram deserves to be rostered by hook or by crook. Mark Ingram is a decent running back 3, running back 4 on your roster. And the last name I'm going to highlight, a guy who is criminally underowned, Tony Jones Jr., the second running back in New Orleans. There was a reason that the Saints felt confident in releasing Latavius Murray, and it's because Jones looked excellent in the preseason, and he carried it over into week 1. He had 11 carries for 50 yards. Yes, you could say there was a little bit of garbage time in that, but I think that he's going to be involved. I'm not saying he's a start. He is a great handcuff, but by all means, you need to have him on your roster, because let's say Kamara goes down, Tony Jones Jr. is an excellent person to take over that backfield. And not to forget, speaking of Mark Ingram a little bit earlier, let's not forget that the Saints aren't too unfamiliar with having 2 productive fantasy running backs, all on Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara from just a couple years ago. So Tony Jones Jr. does have a shot to be excellent in this backfield. Pick him up. Don't waste any time. Tony Jones Jr., add him to your list. Let's talk about that wide receiver position a little. So Jerry Judy, thankfully, high ankle sprain, still an injury that's going to sideline him multiple weeks, but the bright side is he escaped what looked like a devastating injury. Well, that means more opportunity and more work for guys like KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick. Now, I'm going to put Tim Patrick as a higher priority to KJ Hamler, because I think he's going to be more involved. I think he's going to get more targets, more touches, more opportunity. Yes, KJ Hamler is going to come with those big splash plays, but Tim Patrick was a solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 last year. And I think he can replicate that production. Last year, he was replacing Cortland Sutton in the lineup. This year, if he replaces Jerry Judy for an extended amount of time, Tim Patrick is a solid fantasy option. And Teddy Bridgewater was able to sustain 2,000-yard wide receivers in Carolina just a season ago. But Tim Patrick, if you need a wide receiver, I think he's a good option to add to your waiver wire list. Some other names are, again, in that bargain bin. Let's talk about Quinn and Cephas. He had 7 targets for the Lions. They were in catch-up mode the majority of the games, but honestly, the Lions are going to be in catch-up mode in a lot of their games. Positive game scripts if you have a wide receiver targeting. Definitely a name that you can find, plug and play, and just add to the end of your bench. Someone has to be the #1 wide receiver in Detroit. Van Jefferson, flashy play on Sunday Night Football, operated as the #3 wide receiver in that offense. Outsnapped Deshaun Jackson 34-14 in total snap count. And it looks like the Rams are going to want to air it out a little bit more. So boom bust play certainly, but I can see Van Jefferson having enough opportunity in this offense. The last one I'm going to put out there, Cedric Wilson of the Cowboys. Michael Gallup was more involved than I was expecting, and we know that this is going to be a high volume passing offense. So the #3 wide receiver definitely should see some love in the Cowboys offense. Michael Gallup obviously is going to be missing time. I believe he was placed on IR this week. So Cedric Wilson is that next man up, and I could see him having occasional fantasy upside. And hey, Amari's been a guy who's missed time before. We haven't seen any missed time from CeeDee Lamb, but certainly the wide receiver equivalent of a handcuff here is Cedric Wilson, should either of the 2 guys above him miss time. Now, tight end, let's face it, is a fantasy wasteland, but the one guy I want to throw out there for you is Juwan Johnson. Obviously, 2 touchdowns from Jameis Winston in week 1. Only saw 3 targets. You would like to see a higher target volume, but if the guy's landing in the end zone, that's all you want from your fantasy tight ends, am I right? What about DSTs? As a guy who likes to stream myself, I'm going to throw out a couple great DST options for you in week 2. The Giants are a widely available defense, and they have a Thursday Night Football game against Taylor Heineke. Yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick has been ruled out and has been placed on the short-term IR. So Taylor Heineke, yes, he's shown some flashes of brilliance in the playoff game last year and in week 1. But overall, he is still backup quarterback, and the Giants' defense has been much improved each of the last 2 years. Potential streaming option, not one that I want as my long-term DST, but in week 2, serviceable. Also serviceable, let's face it, the Bears' offense with Andy Dalton looked very average and mediocre. So insert the revenge game against the Cincinnati Bengals, obviously the longtime home of Andy Dalton. I could see the Cincinnati Bengals with at least a solid fantasy floor against a very boring Bears offense. But anyway, Slumpbusters, that's my waiver wire pickups for the week. Those are guys that I might potentially stream in week 2. And those are guys that should be added to your roster or your lineup. But if you have any more questions about that, leave them below in the comments. Certainly, hey, if you have any questions about how much fab do I want to use on this player, drop that below too. I want to kind of get a little bit more insight on that for you guys. Anyway, like this video, helps us a lot in the algorithm. Subscribe to our channel as we push towards 2,000 subscribers, folks. We appreciate you and love you. And check out our partner, cavemancoffeecode.com. Yes, cavemancoffeecode.com. Don't be a chump. Use promo code SLUMP and save yourself some money on some delicious cold brew coffee today from cavemancoffeecode.com. All right, y'all. I hope you had a W or 2 in week 1 of fantasy football, but let's do it again in week 2. I'm here for you, and I will see you on the next one.